As far as I'm concerned, Louis Theroux is one of the greatest living documentary filmmakers. His awkward affectations, that is, his overwhelming dweebiness, possess a disarming quality that gives his films a humanity and a personal touch that a large number of documentary films lack. It's his affable awkwardness, combined with a genuine sense of curiosity and empathy that consistently peels back the layers of even the most grizzled of interview subjects. Just look at a documentary like Head for the Hills, in which he manages to goad the tough-as-nails right-wing survivalist Beau Gritz into an impromptu colouring-in session. Or his take on gangster rap, in which he lays down one of the sickest verses of the millennium.
Boy, Wowin! Got him. With your boy, Wowin! I gotta make this money. It's all on me. We gotta get this cheese. It's all we need.
Whether he's goofing around in the world of swingers or taking a dour look at the lives of society's down and out, his films always manage to take a human and tangible look at the misunderstood or otherwise off-kilter aspects of Western society. I think that it's this humanity that sits at the core of every Theroux documentary that makes Scientology such an odd fit for his first feature-length project. My Scientology movie, released towards the tail end of 2015, marks Theroux's transition to the big screen, in spite of the fact that its subject seems so ill-fit-in.
Louis, you need to leave.
Catherine, we don't need to leave.
Yes, you do.
Catherine, we
You're
don't.
trespassing.
We're not,
Well, you're not
Catherine.
trespassing now. You can stay
Fine.
here all night.
Thank you.
Scientology, California's infamous religion, has no face. It's an organisation that has done its best over the years to dehumanise and depersonalise itself. In many ways, it's the antithesis of Louis' usual targets. From the outside looking in, there's no humanity to poke at. No amount of affable awkwardness could ever disarm it. That doesn't stop him from trying, though.
Hello? Oh, can I just give you a letter? Can I just... Hello?
Excuse me,
Here, let me just give you... I've got a letter from Mr. Miscavige. Wait, I've got...
In both tone and delivery, My Scientology movie is surprisingly light-hearted, more akin to Theroux's Weird Weekend series in the late 90s than his later, more investigative work. To some extent, I feel like this was a conscious decision. The soundtrack frequently refers back to the cheap muzak that defined that series, while the core interviews themselves tend to be very laid-back and conversational. Although Scientology does have its dark sides every bit as worthy of admonishment and serious introspection as any of Louis' later subjects, it's also firmly rooted in the eccentricities of American culture, and Theroux, along with director John Dower, uses this as the springboard to get a little weirder. The core conceit of the film is that the Church of Scientology are notoriously reclusive, and as a result, Louis can't obtain an interview with any active members. To get around this, he turns to former members, most prominently Marty Rathbun, a man who willingly proclaims himself as the once badass of Scientology, and it's in Rathbun that the documentary finds most of its insights. As is the case with any Theroux documentary, a lot of the film boils down to two people sitting in a room and talking. Piece by piece, Louis whittles away at Rathbun, but to complement his usual gonzo antics, the documentary also stages the creation of a fake movie within a movie, revolving around recreations of key moments in the career of the Church of Scientology's leader, David Miscavige. This provides a frame narrative for the film, and also draws out a few active members of the notoriously litigious church to confront Louis in his production, most often with comic results.
I think you're harassing me.
Listen, you're filming me. How can I be harassing you? Come back. Stop running away.
I think that My Scientology movie is perhaps one of Louis' most subversive documentaries. Not so much in the sense that it subverts the established consensus on Scientology, but insofar as it slyly subverts its perceived aims. Anyone watching closely enough should quickly realise that My Scientology movie isn't actually a movie about Scientology. The movie aspect of it, that is, the movie within a movie that acts as the film's framing device, is largely superfluous. Although it's introduced as a means of teasing talking points and memories out of Marty Rathbun, it ultimately achieves nothing that Louis' usual blend of casual conversation couldn't. Likewise, it says little about Scientology that Louis' initial research couldn't. There are numerous points throughout the film in which Louis alludes to the reading he's already done on Scientology, and with even a cursory knowledge of the works he mentions, it's clear to see that his naivete is a constructed act, a courtesy to the audience and his subjects. When it comes to Scientology itself, you can't help but feel that Louis, and by extension the film itself, already knows all of the answers going in. This is where the film will prove most divisive. True enough, a lot of the film's reviews following its recent American release have returned to the same question. If the film doesn't explicitly reveal anything about Scientology's inner workings, what purpose does it serve? In the wake of more hard-hitting documentaries like Alex Gibney's Going Cleared and Panorama's Scientology and Me, my Scientology movie feels surprisingly toothless.
You don't mind? That's not bothering you?
That what?
That he's filming us?
Doesn't bother me that you're filming us.
Oh, good.
Look a little closer though, and it's clear that the real soul of the film is located in the peripheries of Scientology, most notably in Marty Rathbun himself. If anything, the flaw is in the naming. This film isn't an exploration of Scientology as much as it is an exploration of the personalities within an abusive system. Any abusive system. It just so happens that Scientology proves the most fitting backdrop. Consider this as the flip side of Gibney's Going Clear. If you're looking for the unadulterated facts surrounding Scientology, you're better served elsewhere. But if you're looking for a more subtle take on life around its edges, my Scientology movie is deceptively effective.
They say it brainwashes people.
It is. It's mind-numbing.
No. I'm doing the... They say it brainwashes people.
Do I look like I'm brainwashed to you? I'm your neighbor. I'm your best friend. Scientology is an applied religious philosophy. It's tools to improve yourself.
As Louis and Rathbun's relationship becomes frayed around the edges, Louis' line of questioning gears increasingly towards Rathbun's own complicity in Scientology's alleged abuses. Rathbun notably only left the Church of Scientology once he was put in its firing line, and it's interesting to note the idiosyncrasies of his behaviour when referring to the Church's unsavoury practices. When it comes to the good things, Rathbun is keen to remind us that he was once the dragon of Scientology, the big bad.
I was the baddest ass dude in Scientology.
But when it comes to the bad stuff, the lion's share of the organisation's alleged villainy is thrust onto the shoulders of its long-standing leader, David Miscavige, and I think that Louis does a good job of deflecting this back on to Rathbun himself. There's a point, midway through the film, when Louis directly asks Rathbun about one of his alleged abuses, an incident in which he hit one of his subordinates. Rathbun, who seems to some extent proud of his previous stature in the church, if not of his role in the church itself, acknowledges that he enjoyed it. The speed of his response suggests that he might not even regret it. Understandably, Louis seems taken aback by his frankness. It's moments like these that diverge from the expected narrative and give the film its voice. Louis has always been good at teasing out people's complexities. He has a willingness to listen and a frankness in his speech that invites genuine conversation. People often describe his interviewing style as giving people rope to hang themselves with, but on reflection, I think that's maybe a bit too negative. Louis' style isn't character assassination so much as character study. Every time I return to Head for the Hills, for example, I'm amazed at how much life it brings to a subculture of zealous survivalists who would otherwise be easily dismissed as just kooks. Louis can be hard to palate for newcomers because he rarely comes to satisfying conclusions. If anything, the prevailing message offered by his life's work is that people are complicated, regardless of their actions or affiliations. It's in Rathbun that Louis has found one of his most complex subjects to date. In him, we have proof that for all of its kookiness, Scientology is a framework for abuse and neglect that at times looks unnervingly close to our own normal values. Throughout my Scientology movie, it's easy to notice how entwined Scientology is with Hollywood culture. Of course, there are the obvious references to Tom Cruise, but also some unexpected surprises elsewhere. In an early section of the film, Louis and his crew are sprung upon by a jobbing actress, drawn like a moth to flame by the production's cameras. As it turns out, Scientologists aren't the only people brought to the surface by a film crew in California. For a brief moment, this actress takes over the show, turning it into a public audition tape. All the crew can do is look on incredulously. By the time she leaves, Louis can't help but wonder out loud if she was actually an actress or a Scientologist sent to disrupt his documentary. From the outside looking in, they both look the same. This is echoed in the film's latter half when Rathbun, on his way back home through an airport, shares footage of a group of Scientologists who hound him through the departures lounge for turning his back on the religion. The point is made that, in their own way, those Scientologists are using Rathbun's camera as an audition tape of their own, as part of a larger highlight reel for David Miscavige to prove their allegiance to the church. When you look at the videos produced by Scientology that frame the documentary, it's hard not to laugh, but when you begin to see the day-to-day life of a Scientologist play out, when you begin to see the people that Louis brings out of the woodwork, or the lives of ex-members like Rathbun, you begin to see the beast in more human terms, especially when directly held up against the accepted oddities of Hollywood culture.
I mean, to me, it's a bit like the Oscars. Like, that's when I was watching the Oscars last night. I was like, wow, it's like a Scientology event. You know, it's that level of Like, that's the semiotics of it. You know, the signifier, they're trying to send a message of grand, big, golden,
Yes.
important. You know, he's wearing it around his neck, but like, is it any more silly than having a little gold man?
The comparisons between Hollywood and Scientology aren't entirely relative, of course. The actress's disruption proves a lot less vindictive than the Scientologists, but the impulse is clearly the same, and it's these connections that really make My Scientology movie shine. Whereas many documentary filmmakers set out simply to document the weird and wonderful, I feel like Louis frequently goes one step further in showing us how kooky subcultures intersect with and mirror our own. No matter how weird they get, cultures are nothing but a reflection of a shared humanity within, and through his personable, awkward style of interviewing, Louis always cuts straight through to this humanity, even when exploring the most alien of cultures. Like I said, it's easy to look at Scientology and gawk and laugh, and trust me, Theroux's film has ample opportunities for both, but to some extent, My Scientology movie also allows us to relate to it. In his opening preamble to the film's events, Louis stresses that he wants to create a different kind of Scientology film, one that looks at the organisation in a more favourable light. Understandably, there's a big, bold asterisk that should be placed on top of that statement, but to some extent, I feel like he succeeds. This is definitely a different kind of Scientology film.
Command it as loudly as you can.
Sit down in that chair!
Thank you. Now have it comply. Now.
Thank you!
Okay, good.
I've often wondered how people become involved in organisations like Scientology, and the initial answer usually tends to be either because they're stupid, mean, or desperate. I feel like this never goes far enough. Louis' film offers more substantial answers to this question, even in the simplest act of getting Rathbun to admit to the satisfaction of hitting another person in the face. All said, I think it's a sign of Louis' abilities as an entertainer and an interviewer that, even while saying little about the film's core subject, he still manages to tap into something we weren't quite expecting: the humanity at the heart of one of the world's most mechanistic religions. In the transition to the big screen, Louis hasn't lost his charm. My Scientology movie takes an impossible premise and turns it into something surprisingly insightful. Sure, it isn't Theroux's best documentary. He doesn't rap for the start, but it sure says a lot about his continuing growth as a documentary maker.
Oh, forget it, Marty. I'm not...
You know, fuck yourself. Truly.
I consider myself fucked.